Sega.
Well, here it is, the big event. Or at least what was supposed to be the big event until my viewpoint started to change radically a few months ago, and I want to make something perfectly clear. I love Sonic Unleashed. I love the large scale and depth in the world it created in terms of gameplay and even the story. Sonic's gameplay and level design was exhilarating and well designed, and I even enjoyed the Wolf Hog. He wasn't as quick, but he still had a lot of aspects in his levels that I really admired. It was a nice way of changing the pace. Though it wasn't a perfect game, I still enjoyed Sonic Unleashed a whole lot. I could not say that, however, for its successor, Sonic Colors, a game that was praised by critics and even by fans, but not by me. While I enjoyed the game during my first go, over time it just started growing more pale. The levels weren't as engaging as they were in Unleashed, and the level design and even the gameplay just felt like a step backwards. And I feel the game made the incredibly wrong decision to design its levels around the new Wisp power-ups, which were aliens that served as the game's main gimmick. As a result, it gave us insanely blocky 2D platforming with these incredibly linear 3D sections. This game barely counted as a 3D Sonic game. Hell, it was barely even a Sonic game anymore. The game just limited itself from the hardware it was built on, from the controllers it was compatible with, and especially with the gimmick that just handicapped everything about it. It played it so damn safe, but people just fell in love with the game. It was one of the most well-received Sonic games in years. So clearly, the safer and more back-to-basics gameplays were what people wanted. Meanwhile, they scoffed at something innovative and unique like Sonic Unleashed. If I were following the series back in 2010 and were capable of reaching the same viewpoints that I have now, I honestly don't think I would have been that surprised to see that the next Sonic game would go down this safer path. The year was 2011. The Sonic franchise was celebrating its 20th anniversary. And in April of that same year, we ended up getting a teaser trailer for the anniversary game to be released in November. It was pretty much the opening movie that I played at the start of this review. Just Sonic in this pale white world just running fast and such. Then he goes jump off this hilltop. And holy crap, it's classic Sonic! Oh my god, he's teaming up with modern Sonic! Oh my god! Wait a minute. Something doesn't seem to be adding up. And I'll bring that up later. So, this is the premise of the new game. We have two Sonics, meaning two different gameplay styles, because that just needed to happen. It was revealed that the game's title was Sonic Generations, and it got released later in November to huge praise from critics and fans. People just love the game and consider it to be the best modern Sonic game ever made, and I don't like it that much. Let's get this over with. Like usual, let's begin with the story. Guess what? The writers for this game are Ken Pontek and Warren Graff. You know, the acclaimed writers of Sonic Colors, the two guys who know so much about this franchise. I'm so glad they're back. I'm sure they're gonna do a great job. Spoiler alert, they didn't. To be fair, the whole premise of Sonic Generations is pretty dead on arrival, but I guess we should discuss this plot. Or more just stuff that happens in this game, because this does not count as a fucking story. So the game begins with classic Sonic running about until he gets sucked into this time vortex caused by this monster thingy. We then cut to modern Sonic, who Tails decides to surprise with a birthday party. Yeah, a surprise birthday subplot. That was seriously the best idea these writers could come up with for this anniversary game. Anyways, Sonic and company get ambushed by the same monster thingy coming out of the vortex, who knocks Sonic out and kidnaps all his friends. After Tails and the rest of Sonic's friends are kidnapped, Sonic wakes up in this white world completely unharmed and heads off to save everyone. During all of this, him and Tails decide to reflect on how familiar all these places are, or more just the first 2 fucking levels, and they end up coming across classic Sonic from earlier. Oh, and there's also classic Tails. Yeah, classic Tails just pops out of nowhere. We don't get any sort of introduction cutscene for him, he's just here. Brilliant. So they restore the rest of the levels and defeat Dr. Eggman a bunch, and finally come across this time monster, which turns out to be operated by Eggman. Wow, Eggman's the villain, I'm so surprised and shocked. He also has some additional help from an insanely obese classic Robotnik. So both classic and modern Sonic go super to stop the Eggman, and none of Sonic's friends bother to help them because who fucking cares. After defeating both Eggman, everyone is returned home and classic Sonic and Tails decide to leave, with modern Sonic telling him this bullshit line.
Hey Sonic! 未来を楽しめよ! 面白いことが待ってるぜ!
Yeah, it sure will. And that's the end of the story. Oh, and there's also an end credit scene where both Eggmen are stuck in the white world and don't know how to get home or whatever. So that was the plot of Sonic Generations, and it sucked. Pontac and Graf proved themselves once again as terrible writers. While there aren't as much jokes in this game as there were in Colors, the writing still feels incredibly off. Not to mention the dialogue is so fucking bad.
I think I figured it out. Yeah, me too. Doubles of us? Places and enemies from our past? We're traveling through time and space!
Every line of dialogue sounds incredibly forced and never feels natural. It's such an odd criticism, but there wasn't a single cutscene in this game that I enjoyed watching. Sonic acts like a total dickhead, Tails is sort of just there, Eggman is really bland, and everyone else is clearly here just for fan service, and even their personalities are really generic and flanderized. Once again, this barely felt like a plot to a Sonic game. There are a few references here and there, but all of them seem really out of place. For example, hey look, Tails gave Sonic a fucking chili dog for his birthday. You know, a reference to that god-awful cartoon from the 90s that's not even canon? Isn't this game so wacky and great at celebrating this franchise? Judging by how Pontac and Graf know nothing about the series, I'm going to assume this wasn't even their idea. Maybe there was just some guy in the staff team that told them, oh, can you make Tails give Sonic a chili dog? It'll be a nice callback to AOSCH, the fans will love it. Then Pontac and Graf just went, alright, and they just put it in the script without hesitating. Fucking brilliant. While on the topic of Sonic's surprise birthday party, what's with all the party guests? Why is Knuckles here? Shouldn't he be on Angel Island guarding the Master Emerald? Why is Rouge here? She's a treasure hunting thief. She doesn't have time for birthday parties. How is Blaze here? Isn't she from another dimension? Why are the Chaotix boys here? They should be at home waiting for the phone to ring so that they could go do detective shit so that they could pay their rent. Amy's there because fuck it, she loves Sonic. She's so obsessed with Sonic and he's the only thing she ever thinks of. Shouldn't she be someplace else doing girly shit or something? Or maybe just living her life? Whatever happened to her becoming more independent like she said she would become in Adventure 1?
魔法の本の世界にエイリアンのいる宇宙遊園地。変な世界は慣れっこだろ?
Okay, the amusement park line is a reference to Colors, I get it. But the Genies and Magic Books line? Is that a reference to Sonic and the Secret Rings? Really? You morons had the choice of calling back to 10 plus games in the main series canon, and you chose to make a callback to the cheaply made spin-off Wii game? Seriously? Some people say that some material might have gotten cut out, with some fans pointing out how there were so many missed opportunities and such. Like, Sonic and Tails reflect on being in Green Hill Zone and Chemical Plant, but they don't talk about the rest of the levels in this game. I understand why fans would be convinced that some scenes might have got cut out, but I highly doubt it. The writers for this game clearly didn't give a single shit. They rushed this script out for a quick paycheck. They didn't bother doing a whole lot of research when writing Colors, so why would they bother improving for this game? I'm pretty sure the bits where Sonic and Tails reflect on the first 2 levels were not Pontac and Graf's ideas. Maybe they must have known Green Hill Zone was Sonic's first level ever, but for Chemical Plant, perhaps that same staff member came back to the writers and told them, oh, can you guys do a cool callback to the purple water in Chemical Plant?
Now that pink water makes me really nervous for some reason.
Yeah, that didn't sound horribly forced in at all. I'm so glad that these 2 writers who know nothing about the history of this franchise were put in charge of writing a game that revolves around the history of this franchise. Nice job. Yeah, the writing is so half-assed and forced. I have a really difficult time determining if I hated the writing more here or in colors. Speaking of colors, going very off topic here, but a user by the name of Douglas the Thingy brought up that Sonic Colors got completely rewritten when it was translated to Japanese. Apparently, Ken Pontac and Warren Graff wrote the original English script, but there was also a third writer that got credited, Yasushi Otaki. I didn't bother mentioning him because I sorta thought all we did was just translate Pontac and Graff's script into Japanese, and I wasn't completely wrong. However, when Otaki translated the script to Japanese, he rewrote almost the entire thing as well. A fan by the name of Wendy Gitlord decided to add subtitles for the rewritten Japanese cutscenes, and it's surprising to see how much different the Japanese script is compared to the English version. Yasushi actually removed all the lame and obnoxious jokes, plus he even rewrote the dialogue to make the characters act more like they're supposed to. Sonic is still a douchebag, but he's like a proper douchebag. He doesn't make lame jokes, he doesn't constantly taunt Eggman in his creations, he's properly cocky, and at some moments he really came off as a badass. Tails isn't a super genius, but he's more of a mechanic, you know, how he's supposed to be. He's not constantly spouting out scientific mumbo jumbo, he's proper Tails. Otaki even fixed Eggman, which I thought would be impossible, but Eggman is actually pretty great in Japan. He's not super generic take over the world fluff, he's actually Eggman. Plus there are some moments where it seems like Otaki was mocking how poorly written Pontac and Graff's original script was, specifically with Orbot and Cubot. I actually really like the two's dynamic in the rewritten script. Everyone's banter feels way more natural and even managed to get a few laughs out of me. I really like how much better the voice chip gags are in Japanese. They're not horribly toned down for little kids, and the punchlines are actually handled way better here. Okay, that bit caught me off guard. Just the plain shut up from Orbot just makes me laugh so much. This is surprising to see. Sonic Colors was rewritten to be better in Japan? Then what was the point of hiring Pontac and Graff? This was the script I was hoping to get from Sonic Colors. It doesn't top Unleashed by a landslide, but it's a solidly written and held together script. It's so bizarre to think Sega decided to rewrite the game this way. Sadly, in case you're wondering, this didn't end up happening to Sonic Generations. Ken Pontac and Warren Graff wrote this game, and it wasn't heavily altered when it was translated to Japanese. So the writing is still lukewarm and underwhelming overall. I didn't even touch on how mediocre the English voice acting is, and this time we have even more new voice actors. Guess I'll start with the new recruits, who we first got to hear in Sonic Freeriders. So in alphabetic order by first name of the character, Amy Rose is now being voiced by Cindy Robinson. Much like Roger Craig Smith is as Sonic, Cindy is terrible as Amy. Instead of trying to impersonate Jennifer Duyard's or even Lisa Ortiz's Amy voices, she instead decided to give Amy this really irritating Minnie Mouse dialect.
You saved me, Sonic. I was afraid I'd never be able to flirt with you again.
God damn it, that's not how Amy should sound. Where is Jennifer Duyard? Amy Rose was like her only noteworthy role, and she had the best Amy voice. I sound like a bit of an asshole by saying Amy Rose was her only noteworthy role, but just look at her IMDb page. She's only listed as being Amy Rose. Apparently she's done absolutely nothing else. Where is this woman? What happened to Jennifer Duyard? Why is this the only picture I could find of her? Did Sega take away her only acting job? What the hell? Blaze the Cat is now being voiced by Laura Bailey, and she sounds just about the same as Bella Hudson from Sonic 06. So the casting department didn't really mess up this recasting, though it does make me question why they even got rid of Bella Hudson in the first place.
As much as I dislike relying on others, I'm grateful for your aid. The creature was beyond my skills.
Charmy B is now being voiced by Colleen Fillard, and Cream the Rabbit is being voiced by Michelle Ruff. Both of them are fine. I'm glad that Charmy sounds way more natural than the 4Kids voice did, and it even sounds pretty close to Charmy's original VA, Emily Corkery.
You know what? Our client sure seems to know a lot about this Dr. Eggman guy.
That was very scary, but being with you makes it all better. Yeah! Hey, you look different.
While Cream just sounds fine. Not really that much to say here. When I initially wrote my Sonic Heroes review, it kind of made me realize that I don't really care that much about Cream the Rabbit. Whoops. Sorry, Cream fans.
Thanks for saving me, Sonic. It was scary in the dark, but I tried to be brave.
SBO is being voiced by Troy Baker, and I don't know how to feel about his voice. Bill Corkery's SBO is still the best because he just made SBO sound cool. He had such a deep and awesome sounding voice. Troy Baker doesn't bother emulating it. Now SBO just sounds like some regular dude. And that's so boring.
Beware, for I have looked into the soul of our enemy, and I saw only darkness.
Knuckles the Echidna is now being voiced by Travis Willingham, and he's just Dan Green again. Seriously, all he's doing is impersonating Dan Green's gruff tough guy voice. It's a pretty good impression. He sounds just as bland and uninteresting as Dan Green's Knuckles voice.
Thanks for the help. Not that I needed it, but it's good to have my sanctuary back.
I'm not your buddy, and don't forget it, smart aleck.
So is this just Knuckles' voice now? A generic tough guy voice? Really? Well, this is depressing. I miss you, Scott Dreyer. Why didn't Sega hold on to your number? Why? Okay, we finally came across a really good voice. Rouge the Bat is being voiced by Karen Strassman, and I really like the sort of seductive and persuasive voice Rouge has now. I still have a lot of attachment to Lonnie Manella's Rouge voice, but I do think Karen Strassman has a lot of potential as Rouge. Kind of a shame that the current writers know nothing about this series, so I doubt that Rouge is going to get that much screen time in the future.
Thanks, Big Blue. That's the first time I've ever been stolen.
Omochao is now being voiced by Laura Bailey, but who fucking gives a shit? Fuck Omochao. Silver the Hedgehog is being voiced by Quentin Flynn. He's okay, I guess. I don't care. Vector is being voiced by Keith Silverstein, and this voice annoys me. Mark Biaggi still feels the most correct as Vector. The 4Kids Vector was just hysterically bad, but this voice? Vector's new voice sounds like a combination of Mark Biaggi and the 4Kids Vector. It sounds so bizarre. Some people say it's pretty cool that Keith mixed up the two voices, but what was the point? Mark Biaggi's Vector sounded perfect. Now Vector just sounds really weird.
Thanks, Sonic. You know, I got a hunch someone or something is controlling that monster.
I didn't even mention this, but Shadow is being voiced by Kirk Thornton. He only has one line and a few grunts in this game, but we did get to hear a lot more of Kirk, Shadow, and Sonic Freeriders, also in this piece of garbage. And it sounds like he's trying to channel David Humphrey's Shadow voice, but instead of giving him a British accent, he instead gave him...
Well, for a random robot we picked up off the street, I'd say he's doing pretty well. No matter how many times you try, you can't win.
That's not a British accent. That's pirate. Shadow sounds like a pirate now. I'm so happy. I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but I just want the original voice actors to come back. I know they couldn't bring Ryan Drummond back as Sonic since he's a union actor, but what, is everyone else in a union too? Where's David Humphrey? Jennifer Dooyard? Mark Biaggi? Shit, Emily Corkery? Why didn't Sega bring any of these people back? Moving on. When it comes to the actors from Sonic Colors, Kate Higgins is still really great as Tails, and even as Classic Tails. She even gave Classic Tails a much younger voice, and that's a pretty nice detail. Mike Pollock as Eggman still sounds like Mike Pollock. He also voices Classic Eggman, and I swear both his modern and Classic Eggman sound the exact same. Further proving my point that Mike isn't even trying to alter his own voice when playing Eggman.
Let me just say that this was a brilliant plan that you came up with. Don't get too self-righteous. It'll be your plan pretty soon. I'm gonna dedicate the rest of my life to forgetting it. I heard that!
Then, of course, there's Roger Craig Smith returning as Sonic. And once again, he's not very good. Somehow, he's even worse here than he was in Colors. His Sonic voice sounds even more forced and obnoxious. I really can't see the appeal in his voice.
Hey guys, what's going on? You having a party or something? Dude, there's the emerald! I'm sorry, I didn't get that memo. I beat you every time. No, seriously, we beat this guy every time. It's like it's our job or something.
That bitch spilled all the champagne. Sorry, Amy. I'm gay. Well, it looks like my Hummer got us here. I mean, I'm the only one who ever drives it, so why have it? It's just a gas waster. Hooba-dooba.
Okay, those last few clips are from Sonic Zombies, but do you understand what I'm trying to say? I mean, it's not like his acting is god-awful or anything, it's the voice. There's no other way for me to put this, but I just don't like Roger as Sonic. He doesn't fit the role, and I don't think he ever will. Also, I'd like to bring up some jerkwad who commented some pretty hateful stuff on my Colors review. I removed his comments, but he was basically complaining about how Ryan Drummond was a mediocre voice actor, so I decided to just mess with him, which he ended up taking very seriously. He even went on to say I'm pathetic for preferring Ryan Drummond as Sonic, and that Jason and Roger were just much better. Look, if you're someone who liked Roger or Jason way more than Ryan, that's fine. To each their own, different strokes and all. Just don't leave any hateful comments like this a-hole did. I also love how he made it seem like I have no right to praise Ryan Drummond as Sonic, but he can go ahead and praise Roger Craig Smith and Jason Griffith just fine. Yeah, that's completely fair, douchebag. Afro Warrior, if you're watching this for whatever reason, learn to take a joke, buddy. There are no such thing as wrong opinions. That's such a stupid concept. Also, please go fuck yourself with the "this is why you have no views" comment. That was completely uncalled for. Cunt. Okay, so back to the game. Another thing I dislike about the cutscenes is how everyone keeps doing these odd hand gestures whenever they say their lines. They're always flailing their arms around and making these weird hand gestures for no goddamn reason. If you didn't notice it before, trust me, you'll notice it now. No one in their right mind waves their hands and arms around when they are trying to finish a complete sentence. Moving on to something else. I think Sonic Generations was kind of doomed from the start just from its concept. The whole premise of this game is Sonic gets to meet his younger self, and this is where I'm conflicted about Generations as a whole. I'm sorry, but I don't like how this game makes it to where there are two Sonics. I especially hate how they're supposed to be different characters. That's so stupid. I didn't even mention this back in my SA1 review, but Sonic got redesigned for that game and has had this newer design for nearly 20 years. I didn't mention this because 1, I completely forgot to bring it up, and 2, I didn't think it was that big a deal. I've heard people who say that they hate modern Sonic's design, and I have no clue why. Him and classic Sonic have the same basic design. It's just that modern Sonic is taller, has longer quills, and his eyes are green. He's not that radically different. If it really is a big deal to you that classic Sonic got redesigned to be his modern self, then I'm sorry, you're a huge pussy. Seriously, it's not that big a deal. He looks fine. To be honest, there's a good reason why Sonic had to get redesigned for Adventure 1, and Generations helps prove this point I'm about to make. Classic Sonic looks really pudgy in 3D. He looks kinda awkward here, so modern Sonic's rendition is appropriate. He blends in better in 3D, way better than Classic Sonic does. Even in 2.5D, Classic Sonic looks out of place. Classic Sonic was meant to stay in 2D, not 2.5D, just 2D. He was designed that way, and modern Sonic was designed so that he could fit in the third dimension. It was completely necessary to redesign Sonic because he needed to fit better in 3D. Shamei made an excellent video explaining why this change happened, and I'd recommend watching it, despite how lengthy it could be. Then again, you are watching my lengthy review, aren't you? Sadly, the people who made Sonic Generations didn't really understand why this artistic change happened. This ended up creating a very contrasting plot hole that is so unfixable that it honestly makes me wish this game didn't exist. Generations doesn't treat modern and classic Sonic as the same character but just split in two, but more that classic Sonic is supposed to be a younger Sonic, with modern Sonic being the adult Sonic. This is so fucking dumb. This idea completely contrasts the whole goddamn reasoning as to why Sonic had to get redesigned. Generations is seriously making it seem like classic Sonic just grew up to be modern Sonic, which is so stupid. You're seriously telling me this pudgy and short Hedgehog not only grew taller and got longer quills, but also somehow got green eyes? That's dumb. That's so dumb. And if you believe this idea, then you're about as dumb as Sega and the writers themselves. Now, you're probably wondering, which Sonic do I prefer, modern or classic? My answer: I prefer Sonic. Just Sonic. In my eyes, there's only supposed to be just one Sonic. From my perspective, classic Sonic and modern Sonic are the same character. They're supposed to be the same quirky, 15-year-old, cocky, fast on their feet hedgehogs with attitude. Seriously, they're the same character just drawn differently, and I have no idea how Generations fucked this up so badly. Modern Sonic and classic Sonic are two different art styles that are contrasting with each other, not a younger and older Sonic. That doesn't make any sense. Neither do classic Tails and modern Tails being together. That's equally just as stupid. Apparently, we weren't just going to get classic and modern Sonic, but there was also going to be a third Sonic in this game that would represent the Dreamcast lineup of games. And supposedly, this Dreamcast Sonic was going to be voiced by none other than ya boy, Afro Warrior's favorite voice actor, Ryan Drummond, who decided to back out of being in this game because this was around the same time Sega offered him that really shitty contract that asked him to leave his union, which Ryan Drummond smartly said no to, and the third Sonic had to get dropped completely. Thank Christ, and God so help me, please put this company out of business. Look, it would have been nice to hear Drummond as Sonic again, but not as a third Sonic. Having 2 Sonics is dumb enough. We don't need a third one. It would have been bittersweet to have Ryan Drummond come back for this lackluster title in the series. The idea of having a classic and modern Sonic sounds so desperate to please these really gullible fans who can't recognize how dumb of an idea this is. Like, are we supposed to believe that classic Sonic is supposed to be 12 years old and modern Sonic is a 15-year-old Hedgehog, or 16 seeing how there was a birthday subplot? Thanks a bunch, Pontac and Graf. There's nothing else I could add to this. The whole idea of having 2 Sonics is so stupid and pretty dull. It's just needless fan service to create classic Sonic as a separate character. And it makes me so confused that this idea even got greenlit. What makes it even worse is that there are a few cutscenes where they desperately try to make classic Sonic seem like modern Sonic is the better character. Almost as if classic is looking up to modern as a cool father figure. And this idea has seriously led to a whole bunch of really stupid and probably really younger fanboys to believe that classic Sonic isn't just a younger Sonic, but that he's somehow Sonic's son. How stupid do you have to be? This is where my issues with classic and modern start to get worse. The whole idea of this is just building a wall between 2 sides of the fanbase, and it continues to separate them over which Sonic is supposed to be better. When in reality, they're arguing over nothing that's important since they're supposed to be the same character just in 2 different art styles. The transition from classic to modern was not a big deal to me. Sonic was still the exact same character. Even the Genesis games kept altering Sonic's appearance with each new entry, so Sonic Adventure's redesign didn't seem that out of place to me. But here comes along Sonic Generations, which throws that idea out the window and tries to convince these really dumb people that classic and modern are 2 different characters. No! Get this right. They're both the same character. They're not classic or modern Sonic. They are both Sonic the Hedgehog. Both are the same 15-year-old, cocky, fast-thinking, quick on their feet, cartoon, blue hedgehog. The only obvious difference between them is that they're drawn differently, but their personalities should remain the same. This is one of the 2 major things I think Generations botched up, and I'm so surprised that most people and fans don't realize this. If you haven't caught on by now, Sonic Generations has a terrible plot from both a writing standpoint and just from its premise alone. It was dead on arrival for me. Well, for me now. And I also feel that the premise kind of affects how I feel about the levels as well.
Yeah, me too.
Guess I'll start talking about that now. So since Sonic Generations is playing it safe beyond repair, we have 9 past levels from older games that are brought back for this game. Not only do we have returning levels, we also have a returning gameplay style. Classic Sonic. Now, in comparison to a certain game that advertised itself that it would play exactly like the Genesis games when it turns out it didn't, does Sonic Generations level up that one game? Yes, but not by much. Classic Sonic's levels are all about 2.5D platforming, and he's got all the movesets from the Genesis games. He can jump into badniks without an issue, and he's got the spin dash as a default move. You can use the spin dash by pressing down what would be the boost button, and to be honest, the spin dash isn't that far off from being Classic Sonic's boost. The reason being that is because it's really fucking powerful in Generations. If you're charging the spin dash while you're on a slope and you jump at the right time, you could seriously travel a great distance through the air. I have mixed feelings about this overpowered spin dash, but it does prove very useful when it comes to killing enemies. And sadly, this is where my positives for Classic Sonic kind of end. While the gameplay style is a neat copy of the Genesis gameplay, it kinda messes up an important aspect that was very present in the Genesis games: momentum. The Genesis games had an additional element that a 3D Sonic game still hasn't been able to successfully capture. I mentioned this back in my SA1 review, but one of my favorite things about Sonic's gameplay in the Genesis games is how he can manipulate physics and build up momentum to reach newer areas in a level, or just to pick up more speed. Classic Sonic and Generations kinda lacks that. You can still run for a bit and press down or crouch to make him roll, but he doesn't carry that much momentum. You can't even roll down a hill normally because the game's mechanics seem to purposely keep slowing down Classic Sonic while he's in ball mode. When it seems like Classic Sonic did manage to pick up momentum when running off a slope, it never really feels natural. It comes off being really automated. It doesn't have that much flow. It's not as gratifying to play like it was in the Genesis games. I know some fans like the Great Clement look down on people like me who complain about how Classic Sonic and Generations or even Sonic 4 lacks momentum-based gameplay and act as if that element wasn't such a big deal. But the thing is, it really did add to the gameplay, and that's why people like me bring it up. I loved how in the Genesis games when Sonic could manipulate the terrain to reach newer routes if you're really good at playing the game. I don't think looking down on fans bringing this stuff up is really helping anything. Really, it just shows that the other side doesn't completely understand why they like Sonic, and those people who are pushing this element aside as if it's really worthless don't necessarily realize that it was actually an important additional element that helped them love the game even more. This isn't needless nitpicking, it's legitimate criticism. Classic Sonic didn't really capture the same feel. However, in terms of what Classic Sonic plays like in Generations, it does get the job done. While the air and ground momentum is a bit off, it does do a decent job replicating how the Genesis games played. I know I'm clearly not the only one who complained about Classic Sonic's lacking momentum and physics. A member from Sonic Team did come out and say that they could have made Classic Sonic's gameplay more physics-based, but they were limited by the capabilities of the Havoc engine, which made them unable to perfectly capture the Genesis' original gameplay. I guess that would be a plausible excuse, but there's a skill, I'll talk about what that is later, called athleticism, which you can equip for Classic Sonic that makes its physics and gameplay more rougher and heavy on terrain. So you couldn't replicate the Genesis games, but you could give Classic Sonic an ability that actually makes him play closer to the Genesis games. Makes perfect sense. When it comes to the level design, Classic Sonic's levels are actually put off really well. They come off as pretty standard platformer design. I do like the separate pathways, occasional slopes, and even the few hidden areas where you can find a ring box or invincibility. Classic Sonic's level designs were thankfully put off extremely well, and a lot of care and craft was put into them. I just kinda wish the gameplay could benefit it a bit better. I'm also not the biggest fan of how several or just about every loop structure has a dash pad placed in front of it. It proves extremely pointless, especially given how powerful Classic Sonic Spin Dash is in this game. The scripted sections kinda make the levels pretty dull at points, but thankfully these moments aren't too constant. It's not completely perfect, but Sonic Team did an exceptionally good job recreating Classic Sonic's gameplay and level design. It's a bit rough around the corners, but it does work extremely well. Now then, let's move on to the other available gameplay style, the one we're all familiar with, Modern Sonic. This Sonic is still using the same gameplay style brought on by Sonic Unleashed, and I think Generations did a wonderful job at redefining this gameplay style. I'll say this now, this was the best game that incorporated the boosting gameplay. Sonic still doesn't have smooth tight controls like he did in the adventure games, but his ground speed now when he's not boosting is thankfully not as slippery anymore. He controls pretty tightly now, and not just in 2D platforming, but also the 3D sections. The movesets brought back are the usual homing attack, the air boost, quick stepping, drifting, and the stomp. With the double jump being gone, the homing attack and air dash are set back to pressing the jump button twice, and the air boost is activated by pressing jump and then the boost button, but it only ever activates whenever your boost gauge is filled. These button layouts are a wonderful way of using this gameplay style, and it kinda makes me wish that Sonic Unleashed had an option for it. Now the boost and homing attack are no longer sharing the same button. Same goes for the stomp, that's given its own button as well. The light dash is also brought back, and just like in Unleashed, it's activated by pressing the triangle/Y button. So, as a whole, Sonic Generations became the first ever Sonic game, since Sonic Heroes at least, that managed to use all 4 available buttons. This sounds like such a simple thing to praise, but just imagine how expandable this way of laying out button inputs could have improved the adventure titles, or hell, maybe even Heroes. Another thing that Modern Sonic's gameplay style fixes is the drifting system. You can still drift by holding either L or R triggers, but instead of Sonic sliding on the ground like he did in Unleashed and Colors, he rolls into a ball and actually makes sharp turns much quicker. As a result, the drifting system feels so great in this game, and it responds so perfectly. How great would it have been if this drifting system was in Sonic Unleashed's daytime levels, like Skyscraper Scamper or Savannah Citadel? I'm honestly really proud of Sonic Team for perfecting this gameplay style. It's the best it'll probably ever be in any Sonic game. I mentioned this back then, but if Sonic Unleashed ever got a complete remaster, I would be so happy if Sonic Generations gameplay style was used as the game's new placeholder. I would die so happy if this occurred. So yeah, Modern Sonic's gameplay feels really great and is very well done. But do the levels take advantage of it? Oh boy. This is where I'm heavily conflicted. Modern Sonic's levels in this game show off a lot of potential in my eyes. While I'm glad that the boost to win gameplay style was improved upon, I don't think the levels were completely designed around these game mechanics. My first gripe with Modern Sonic is how his levels aren't just in 3D, but also 2D. What's the point of having the 2D sections? Don't we already have Classic Sonic here for 2D gameplay? Now the 2D sections are thankfully not as heavily blocky like they were in Sonic Colors, but they still feel really tacked on and are incredibly pointless. I feel like these 2D sections are here just to make the people who say Sonic can't work in 3D shut their mouths. It's tacky. What sucks is that I really do like the 3D sections a lot. It would have been so nice to have more of them. Why couldn't they just make Classic Sonic be full 2D and Modern Sonic be full 3D? Modern Sonic does a better half and half for both gameplay styles, way better than how Colors handled it, but this only means that only 1/3 of the game is actually in 3D. But how exactly are the 3D sections in general? Truth be told, they're pretty great. They're not horrendously linear like they were in Sonic Colors, or even straightforward hallways like they were in Sonic Unleashed. In Sonic Generations, they're way more open-ended, and come off feeling a lot like the level designs in Sonic Adventure. Almost all of them are full of alternate pathways, platforming sections, and small areas where you could grab an extra life or even a red ring. They're just so wonderful and expansive, and I wish the game had more of it. However, another thing came to my mind upon replaying this game. I wasn't really being amazed by how they're great 3D level layouts for the boosting gameplay, but more, they really would fit pretty well if this game was using the adventure gameplay style. And this is where my problem with the use of the boost to win gameplay resonates. I kinda wish Generations used SA1's gameplay style instead of the boosting gameplay. I personally think it would have been way more beneficial and actually more fun if the game used that previous gameplay style. Why? Well, Modern Sonic's levels are super freaking short. In fact, they're way too short. You could blow past most of them in like 2 minutes at most. And you never really get a good amount of time in any of these levels. If this game used the adventure gameplay style, you wouldn't be able to plow through them anywhere near as quick. It's the Sonic 2 problem again. The levels are too fast for their own good. They don't have that much depth put into them. Okay, I would be pretty satisfied with these levels even with the boosting gameplay. If only this game had one very important feature from Sonic Unleashed. Which feature exactly? Oh, I don't know. Camera control? Where is my goddamn camera control? I can see why Sonic Colors had to lose the camera control since it was on the Wii, which had limited controller support. But why is Generations lacking camera control? This makes no goddamn sense. I would have given so much more credit to Modern Sonic's levels if this game had camera control. I read somewhere that the game lacked camera control because Sonic Team kept running into this weird camera bug that would end up messing up the game's camera system, but instead of trying to fix it, they just made the camera automatic and also have it awkwardly change positions whenever you run off course to look for something else. Why didn't they just fix the bug instead of ditching the camera control? Unleashed had camera control and it worked so well. Ugh. Yes, a simple feature like moving the fucking camera really makes these levels lose a lot of potential. I do really like how much more open-ended they are and how there's plenty of platforming sections in 3D and not just 2D. But the camera support really could have helped. Okay, I think another reason I'm not a big fan of Generations levels is, well, the whole premise of the game really. This is the 20th anniversary title, but this game decided to just play it super safe and decided to bring back levels from past games. Not only do we have unoriginal level themes, we also have unoriginal level music. Okay, fine, I won't diss it. Sonic Generations has a pretty nice soundtrack. Tomoya Otani did have a large hand into making this soundtrack, but the sound director was actually Jun Sano, who hasn't been the sound director since Shadow the Hedgehog. Jesus Christ. To be honest, while he wasn't given that much range and only had to do remixes of older themes, him and his sound team did a remarkably good job. I'll get to each level remix as I run down the levels, however. I'll also have a little more to say about the soundtrack later. In the Genesis era, we have Green Hill Zone from Sonic 1, Chemical Plant from Sonic 2, and Sky Sanctuary from Sonic 3K. I'm going to be honest, while I think Classic Sonic's levels are pulled off pretty decently in this game, Green Hill Zone and Chemical Plant are kinda lackluster. They're not as explorative and really lack any real punch. The same sort of applies to Modern Sonic as well. His Green Hill Zone is overly linear like the levels and colors, and his Chemical Plant has some really confusing design choices. It's one of Modern Sonic's weakest levels, to be honest. Also, I can understand why Green Hill Zone was chosen as the first level in this game, but Chemical Plant? Really? In Sonic 2, you could plow through that level in like 2 minutes counting both acts. Why not Mystic Cave Zone or even Metropolis? Am I the only one who liked Metropolis? I know I'm beating a dead horse with this one, but I'm so fucking sick of Green Hill Zone coming back in almost every anniversary game. Where's Starlight Zone? I miss Starlight Zone. That could have been a much better choice. Does it have to be Green Hill Zone? While the first two zones are kinda lackluster, things eventually pick up with Sky Sanctuary. This level's pretty great, especially for modern Sonic. Look at all these separate pathways and open space. This was really well done. When it comes to the music, all the modern remixes were mostly handled by Jun Sano, who gives each of them very heavy electric guitar riffs, and Nafumi Hateo was in charge of remixing the classic level music. Both Jun and Nafumi did a good job. These are really well made remixes, and it's pretty nice to see that Nafumi is still composing music for this series, especially since he was one of the original composers for Sonic CD's Japanese soundtrack. Speaking of Sonic CD, Generations has character battles, and they're thankfully pretty well done. First up is Metal Sonic chasing Classic Sonic in Stardust Speedway Bad Future. The original Metal Sonic fight was alright. It really did suffer a lot from the limitations of the Sega CD, and not to mention those obnoxious spikes placed everywhere. In Sonic CD, you only had to beat Metal Sonic at the end of the level, but in Sonic Generations, you're actually fighting him. As Classic Sonic, you're constantly running at Metal Sonic while avoiding all the familiar charge attacks until he gets exhausted, leaving an opening for Sonic to smack him. This is a really nice reimagining of the Metal Sonic boss fight. And who would have known the best way to simply fix this was by removing those stupid spikes? Seriously though, this is one of the best boss fights in the game. The music is also really kick-ass, though I'm sure we're all familiar with the remix of Stardust Speedway Bad Future. And it's nice to see that Nafumi Hateo was in charge of remixing it, since he was the one who originally composed it. There's also a remix of the American version of Stardust Speedway Bad Future done by Jun Sano and Cash Cash. Oh yeah, they're still here. Okay, thankfully there's not as much god-awful auto-tune singing, and I do think them and Jun did an excellent job at remixing the American track. It's nice to see that both soundtracks for Sonic CD got some love and attention. There's also a main boss fight for this level, but to reach the boss you have to collect 3 keys. Where do you get the keys? You gotta do 1 mission per each zone. Yep, missions. Throughout the course of the game, you'll end up doing only 9, but the game has a wide selection of missions to do. All of them are really uninteresting to me, unfortunately. They're just a side distraction from the actual game and have no real replay value. They do help you unlock new abilities and can get you more music to listen to, but I don't really care for them. Thankfully, we don't have to play all the missions. After getting all 3 keys from each act, you unlock the main boss fight for the Genesis era, the Egg Robot from Sonic 2. It's really easy, but it is the first boss, so don't expect it to be super difficult like it was in Sonic 2. The orchestral sounding music remix is pretty well done. The electric guitar added by Jun Sano is also a very nice touch. Next up is the Dreamcast era, which includes Speed Highway from Sonic Adventure, City Escape from Sonic Adventure 2, and Seaside Hill from Sonic Heroes? Heroes wasn't on Dreamcast. Wow, this game sucks. They would have been better off calling this the Drummond era. All jokes aside, Speed Highway is alright. I really think it would have been impossible to top the original level with this game's 2 gameplay styles that aren't the adventure engine. Classic Sonic has a nice run through Speed Highway, and Modern Sonic is just sorta alright. The whole concept of mixing 2D and 3D sections for Modern does become insanely glaring, especially in this level. The Classic and Modern remixes are pretty mixed. The Classic remix is incredibly techno sounding and was done by Cash Cash again? Okay, it does sound pretty good. I actually do think I prefer the Classic remix over the Modern remix since it's an actual remix. Modern Sonic sounds almost the exact same as the original version of Speed Highway. I mean, the Modern remix has a few added drum samples and a slightly quicker pace, but it sounds almost the exact same as the original track. It's barely a remix. Jun Sano was in charge of remixing this version, and I'm going to assume that he must have realized there was no way he could modernize Speed Highway's music, especially seeing how the original version was already perfect. One thing that kind of disappoints me about Speed Highway Modern's level is that we don't get the open-ended At Dawn section from SA1, which also means we don't get a remix of At Dawn's peaceful music. That sucks. I do like how there's a separate music track for this game's rendition of the Running Down section. It's another nice collaborative effort from Jun Sano and Cash Cash. City Escape is actually one of the game's best levels. Classic Sonic's level is especially really fun, and has a nice gimmick involving the gun truck. Throughout the entire level it's hunting you down, and you gotta maneuver through the entire area to escape it. Ah, clever. Modern Sonic's level is also just as fun, and I adore the snowboarding section. We haven't had a snowboarding section in a Sonic game since Sonic 06 for Christ's sakes. And this is thankfully a huge improvement over that game's snowboard physics. It handles really well, and the rest of the Modern level is alright. The 3D sections are, again, really well done, but I really wish there was camera support for this game. Seriously, we have a second analog stick to work with. It goes completely unused throughout this entire game. Modern Sonic's 2D sections, once again, feel really tacked on. Again, what is the point of having these sections for Modern if we already have Classic Sonic here for 2D? Oh yeah, you're also being chased by the gun truck near the end, just like in SA2. This time, the gun truck has saw blades and rockets attached to it. That's kind of funny, I guess. The music here is pretty nice. Classic Sonic's remix was done by Cash Cash? Oh no! Okay, I will admit Cash Cash's singing in this game is nowhere near as irritating as it was in Colors, but I still don't like them. But hey, one neat thing is that Generations gives you the option to change music in levels. Throughout the course of the game, you'll unlock different music tracks, and you can choose to play them in any level or boss fight that you want. So for Classic City Escape, I usually have it set to Route 99 from Sonic Advance 3, which was also partially remixed for this game. It sounds great, and it fits pretty dang well. You want to do a fun experiment? Play Classic Speed Highway with Starlight Zone. You will be incredibly surprised how well that music track fits. However, when it comes to Modern City Escape, I will never change the music in this act. The Modern remix was once again handled by Jun Snow, who also composed the original version of Escape from the City. Not only that, but the original singers for Escape from the City, Ted Poley and Tony Harnell, were actually brought back to re-record the vocals. Oh, and I love this remix because of that! The Modern remix is a wonderful update for this song, and I especially love how they managed to add in a few new lyrics, and even a little bit of the bass line from SA2's version of It Doesn't Matter. Did I also mention the new lyrics that fit into the song pretty well? Oh, I love this remix so much. It almost makes me forget how safe and unoriginal this game's whole premise is. Seriously, you must have to be a huge dickhead to not like this song.
And if you love Sonic's modern vocal-fueled soundtrack, why? The new arrangements for the game's iconic tracks are awesome, but I'm most grateful that the game lets you change songs in the levels. There are only so many times you can hear City Escape before you want to kill yourself.
Oh, well, okay then, fuck you too, IGN. Seaside Hill. This level is alright. I do like how Classic Seaside Hill has a few references to Hydro City from Sonic 3K, and Modern Seaside Hill has some pretty nice designs, despite the lacking camera control. However, why exactly was Seaside Hill the level chosen from Heroes? Sega did do a poll for whatever level fans wanted to see return for this game, but was Seaside Hill really the only level people wanted to come back? Why not Grand Metropolis or Bingo Highway? It would have been pretty cool to see a casino type level for the console version of this game. Plus, Seaside Hill was kinda just a 3D Green Hill Zone from the start. So this just means Generations basically has 2 Green Hill Zones. Or maybe 1.5 Green Hill Zones, because this level does mix in a little bit of Ocean Palace into the level. So it's almost like we got 2 levels from Heroes instead of just 1. And I do favor that, despite the fact that this isn't an original level. I really wish the remixes weren't so half-assed either. Something about Classic Seaside's music sounds really forced and forgettable. Modern's remix has the same issues as the Speed Highway remix, where it sounds almost the exact same as the original track. Though midway through the track it does mix in a little bit of Ocean Palace's music. Apart from that inclusion, there's almost nothing unique about these remixes. Shame. The character battle for the Dreamcast era is Shadow the Hedgehog fighting Modern Sonic on the Space Colony Arc. In this reimagining, Shadow and Sonic are racing each other to grab purple orbs that give them more power, thus making them able to run down one another. It's a fun reimagining that also includes a remix of 4 True Story done by Richard Jacques, who was the composer for Sonic 3D Blast Saturn and Sonic R. Nice to see that he's still getting work. The remix sounds alright, but it's really trying too desperately hard to sound really intense and energetic, but it just doesn't compare to the original track at all. The main boss fight is with Perfect Chaos from Sonic Adventure, who looks really great in this game by the way. Sonic just has to charge up the Chaos much like he did in the original boss fight, but this time Sonic's not in his super form. Guess that boost ability really is OP. This boss fight is decently easy, kinda like the Death Egg Robo, but it is way more platform heavy than the original fight. We also get this really awesome remix of Crush 40's Open Your Heart done by Circuit Freak. The vocals sound a little more apparent, and I swear the electric guitar sounds like it's roaring at the beginning of the remix. It's pretty great. After that fight, we entered a third era called the Modern Era? The High Definition Era? Whatever. First up is Crisis City from Sonic 06? What the fuck? Why is Crisis City in this game? Why is Sega acknowledging this fucking game for? Why? Shouldn't we want to forget that this game happened? My review was 97 minutes, I'm getting very bad Vietnam flashbacks. Okay, fuck it. This level's name is now City Escape Bad Future. This is the actual Sonic CD level. So next up is a brand new level called City Escape Bad Future, which is a pretty nice callback to Sonic CD. Kinda strange that they put this level in the third era. This level's pretty nice. I mean, modern Sonic still has the problem of having these forced 2D areas, but I still really liked classic Sonic's level. Also, I did really like that fun bit where the goalpost got taken away by that tornado. Nice attention to detail, Sonic team. The music in this level is pretty solid. Classic Sonic gets this very heavy electric guitar track, which caught me off guard because it's usually modern Sonic who has the electric guitar in his level music. It sounds pretty awesome, and it's actually pretty reminiscent of the Genesis soundtracks. Modern Sonic's level theme is also pretty solid. Instead of electric guitars, his level gets violins, making the level music sound incredibly... I swear, it sounds like a dramatic movie trailer at points. It's great. Both the classic and modern remixes were done by Tomoya Ohtani, and this man has yet to disappoint me. Good job, Tommy. Look, even if I consider this level to be Crisis City from 06, it really can't compare to it, mainly because it's an actually polished and finished level. It's basically its own thing. I honestly wouldn't have minded if this was some sort of post-apocalyptic version of City Escape, as a nice callback to Sonic CD, and even 06. The inclusion of Crisis City in concept is incredibly fucking stupid, but on its own, it's a very well done level. Next up is the Unleashed level, yay! And the level brought back is Rooftop Run. Oh, good choice, oh shit, the level's over after 2 minutes. Fuck. Yeah, I do love that my favorite Unleashed level got brought back, but I don't think Modern Sonic really fits this game's remade level layouts. It's more open-ended and platforming in 3D much more than the original level, but I still feel it would have been better if it had SA1's gameplay style. Not to mention, this level really could have benefited from having camera control! Rooftop Run also seems like it has a celebration constantly occurring. I guess it fits here since this is an anniversary game, even if it is a really odd added detail. Classic Sonic's level is pretty standard stuff. The platforming is still really good, but fuck that clock set piece near the end, it sucks. Both remixes of Rooftop Run are excellent. The classic remix sounds very energetic and techno-ish, while also really hammering in the violin throughout the entire song. The modern remix is glorious. The original version of Rooftop Run perfectly balanced the use of electric guitars and violins, but this version adds way more violins, and it sounds so much more fun and entertaining. Much like Crisis City, Tomoya Ohtani remixed both versions of Rooftop Run, and he even said that these remixes are his 2 favorite compositions he's ever made for a Sonic game. And I can see why. They're so much fun to listen to. I still prefer the original version of Rooftop Run, but the Generations remixes are still so great. The levels themselves are kinda lackluster in my opinion. I mentioned that they are pretty fun and I do like classic Sonic's levels a lot, but modern Sonic feels way too short. He plows through the whole level too quickly. The original Rooftop Run lasted around 5 to 6 minutes, even if you're continually boosting, and that just makes modern Rooftop Run seem so underwhelming to me. Modern Rooftop really highlights just how underwhelmed I feel about modern Sonic's gameplay and level design in general. The Unleashed controls are improved for the better, but the levels aren't designed around them like before. As a once great man said, you can't change the game mechanics but still keep the old level design. That makes no sense. I honestly don't think I'd be this upset about modern Sonic's levels if they just made them longer. Add more to them, give them more stuff to run around in, give us camera control, find a way to make these levels last longer. No! Planet Wisp from Sonic Colors got brought back, and if I didn't already dislike Colors' level design, somehow Generations makes it much worse. Classic Sonic sucks in this level. You spend most of your time in the factory section and everything looks so dull. Platforming feels really tacked on, and speaking of unwanted gimmicks, the Wisps are brought back. Well, 2 of them. In Classic Sonic's level, you get the Spikes Wisp, which is constantly used during these obnoxious padding sections where you have to spin on these wheels to activate a few things to progress through the level. These are not fun. And I'm just talking about the classic level. Modern Planet Wisp sucks! Well, on a brief positive note, I do like how much more open the forest area at the beginning of the level is. It's an actual open world. There's still no camera control, but it still looks incredibly nice. This is really what I was asking for from Sonic Colors all along. Then you enter the factory. These sections are where the level seems to fall apart the most for Classic and Modern. We spend way too much time in the factory sections. While Classic Sonic at least knew to end the level outside, Modern Sonic just takes forever to complete this level. Also, the Wisp included for Modern Sonic is the rocket, and it's just as standard as it was in Colors. Though somehow Generations fucked up something that even Colors got right. In Colors, while the game did make the big mistake of designing itself around the fucking Wisps, you almost never had to use them in order to beat a level. But in Generations, you're always forced to use spikes in Classic's level, and in Modern's level, you're usually using the rocket to reach several higher routes in order to complete the level. This feels way too gimmicky. The music remixes are also pretty bad. The Modern remix sounds so dull and rushed. It's nowhere near as peaceful or elegant as the original track, and the Classic remix sounds so fucking bad that I switched the song to Palm Tree Panic from Sonic CD just so I could finish recording footage for this game. Seriously, fuck that remix. Planet Wisp sucks in Generations. It sucks even harder than it did in Colors. Generations does make the platforming less blocky and generic, but it still feels really tacked on for Modern Sonic. And it doesn't help that the Modern level is almost completely 2.5D once you enter the factory. This was a terrible choice for a final level. This fucking level ain't got shit on Eggman Land. Also, yes, I would so play Eggman Land before any level in Generations, and I'll explain why near the end. So after Planet Shit, we get to the third rival battle, which is with Silver the Hedgehog in City Escape Bad Future. Odd location. With all seriousness, this boss fight isn't too bad, and I think Some Call Me Johnny said it best in the Brain Scratch commentary.
How do you make the Silver boss fight better by default? Take away his ability to grab you. Yeah.
The boss fight for the HD era is the Egg Dragoon from Sonic Unleashed for Modern Sonic, and this boss is actually pretty interesting. In Unleashed, you were fighting the Egg Dragoon as the Wolf Hog, but in Generations, you're playing as regular Sonic. So this boss fight had to get redesigned, and it feels like its own thing now. It's almost like a brand new boss fight, and it's actually pretty solid. You're boosting, grinding, and homing attacking Eggman as he tries to hit Sonic with several projectiles. It's a well done boss fight. What is not as well done is the final boss, the Time Eater. I'm gonna say this now, but Perfect Dark Gaia, as bullshit and difficult as he was in Unleashed, I think he is 100 times better than the Time Eater because this is a terrible final boss. You can access it after collecting all 7 Chaos Emeralds that you get from each boss and character fight. Also, yeah, haha, Shadow gave us the damn 4th Chaos Emerald, that's pretty funny. And in the boss fight, you're both Classic and Modern Sonic. The reason why this boss fight sucks is not because it's really difficult, but it's just so confusing and annoying. As both Sonics, you have to boost at the Time Eater, and you can only seem to hit him with just Modern Sonic. You can toss Classic Sonic at the Time Eater, but I have no idea what Classic Sonic even does to him. You just keep charging at the Time Eater until Modern Sonic eventually boosts at its core. I say eventually because it doesn't always happen. One thing that doesn't help is that your ring count is constantly depleting, and it can be really difficult to see when the rings are coming ahead of you because they blend in with the background. I guess that's part of the reason why they gave us the option to switch from 2D to 3D, because you could collect more rings from Classic Sonic's perspective since they're easier to see. Somehow this boss fight went rather smoothly for my recording session, but believe me, it still sucks. The music is also pretty forgettable stuff. I even switched it to Sonic Boom so that it could feel more engaging to play. I mean, really the best song to choose for this boss fight is Live and Learn, but I didn't have that unlocked yet. Time Eater is such an underwhelming and annoying final boss. This and both levels from Planet Wisp were a terrible way to end this game. Doesn't help that it's actually really easy once you get a good strategy to attack the Time Eater. One thing this game offers for all the boss and character fights are hard modes, which do make them difficult, but most of the hard mode boss fights are just the original fights just extended by a minute or two. Nothing about them has really changed all that much. I don't know about you, but I'd rather beat the Time Eater in 3 minutes as opposed to 6 minutes. So to this game's hard mode, nice try. And that's the entire game. I didn't mention this yet, but continuing on about the soundtrack, The end credits for this game does what Sonic 1, 2, and 3K did, where they played a medley containing all the level music along with footage from the original games. The drums and bass line put on the Green Hill segment sounds amazing. I would love to hear a full version of it. Also, I much appreciate that they used the original Dreamcast version of SA1 in the credits. On the other hand, what version of Sonic Heroes were they playing? Okay, this must be the PS2 version because the frame rate and colors are pretty shit and flat. Ah! This game! Get it off screen! Get it off screen! Oh, thank God, it's Sonic Unleashed. You wonderment of a Sonic game, I just want to play you over and over again. This review is a mess, but if I can focus on the soundtrack for a bit, the level remixes are extremely hit and miss, but when there's a good remix, it's a damn good remix. Apart from the level themes, we get remixes from other games in the franchise that are usually heard in the missions. There's this remix of Emerald Beach from Sonic Battle. One of the missions has a remix where Cash Cash fucks up Supersonic Racing from Sonic R. No thanks. And weirdly enough, we get 2 remixes of Balloon Park from Sonic 3. Also, the 3DS version has even more remixes of level themes, but I'll talk more about that whenever I review that version in the distant future. All I'll say about that version now is that I love the classic and modern remixes in Emerald Coast. Seriously, go listen to them. They're fantastic. There are also some returning tracks that are in the menus and such. We get to hear the menu music from Sonic Heroes again, the results screen music from Sonic 2 got remixed, and we even get a remix of Door into Summer from Knuckles Chaotix of all games. And you hear it while you're in the collection room. The soundtrack for Sonic Generations is a good treat, it just suffers from this game's choice to be unoriginal. It's still great to have Jun Snow come back, and especially for an anniversary game of all things. I hope to hear more music from him again, but maybe in a game that's not playing it so horribly safe. Apart from the remixes, you can also unlock a few past music tracks, including the original version of Supersonic Racing, almost every Crush 40 song, along with a few other vocal themes. Plus there are a few level music from past Sonic games. And one of them is Diamond Dust Zone from Sonic 3D Blast, which is such an oddly specific inclusion. Maybe this is Sonic Team's way of apologizing for how this music track got butt-fucked in Sonic Chronicles The Dark Brotherhood in some horrendously awful remix. I'm sure we all forgot about that. The supplements in Sonic Generations is actually where the game truly shines. We have these neat things called skills to unlock. Skills can equip classic or modern Sonic with all sorts of new abilities. this being a quicker stop, a much larger boost gauge, giving classic Sonic a homing attack? And one of the cool things this game offers as a skill for classic Sonic are the elemental shields from Sonic 3K. Yeah, all 3 shields are finally brought back, and all 3 of them work exactly the way they did in Sonic 3K. This is pretty awesome, but you can only use the shields as a skill, you know, rather than smashing them out of television monitors like you do for rings or 1-ups. What's pretty weird is that you can unlock the shields in the missions, but in a few missions they even gave the model, graphics, and programming for them to work in TV monitors, but they're still only used as skills. Odd. The programming for the shields can also be pretty odd, especially for the electric shield. If you're shot in the air with the electric shield equipped, then Sonic can just jump in the air without the shield going off. It's pretty odd looking, but sometimes this could be used to break the game. One of the most infamous parts of this game is 3D Classic Sonic and Rooftop Run. Yeah, 3D Classic Sonic. When you're in Rooftop Run and have an electric shield, if you jump during this automated spring segment, Classic Sonic can actually use the electric shield to jump out of the Z-axis, and he'll be able to move around in 3D. This is super easy to do, and it's also so bizarre to see. Classic Sonic also controls like shit in 3D, so I wouldn't really recommend doing this. You can't really do anything with this glitch apart from running on the empty graphics until you fall off an edge and lose a life. Generations is a relatively stable game, but some things like this can really make the game look bad. It's also been nearly 6 years and this glitch still hasn't been patched out. Step up your game, Generations. Oh, and in case you're wondering, you can buy Super Sonic as a skill that both Classic and Modern Sonic can use. However, this is probably the most unfun Super Sonic I've ever seen. Classic Super Sonic is just invulnerable. He doesn't have a higher jump or quicker ground speed. Meanwhile, Modern Super Sonic just flies over everything when you're pressing the boost button, and it's so boring. But what makes both of them much worse is that their ring counter got fucked. How did they mess that part up? It wasn't going down that fast during the Time Meter boss fight. But now Classic Sonic's ring count goes down by like 3 rings after 1 second, and all of Modern Sonic's rings get drained super quickly when boosting. Super Sonic is meant to be overpowered, but he doesn't really feel all that great to use in Generations. Why was he so butchered in this game? Because of these flaws, I never ever play as Super Sonic in Generations. Oh well. One kinda cool thing, in the console version at least, is that you could buy a Genesis controller from the skill shop, and in the Green Hill Zone part of the hub area you'll find a Sega Genesis. Inside it is a copy of Sonic 1 that you could play, which is pretty cool. I kinda wish the rest of the Genesis games, or at least Sonic 2, were on here, but oh well. It's pretty weird that this is only on the console version and not the PC version. The red rings are also brought back, but they're only used for collecting artwork and music, which you can look at and listen to in the collection room. I do think that the White World hub area is pretty neat, if very blank. Though completing all the missions in a level area can add way more color and depth to each part of the hub world, and it's a pretty nice way of congratulating you for completing the game. I mean, this was the first Platinum trophy I ever got on my old PSN account, so there's that. Will I ever try to get all the trophies on my newer account? I don't know. Sonic Generations is not a bad game. It would be very bizarre for me to consider it one. Even people who don't care about or even those who hate Sonic think that Generations is a solid game. And that's cool and all, but I really don't know if I'd ever play through it again. I don't like it when a game plays it safe just to appease its audience. I feel like I'd be a tool if I considered it one of the best Sonic games ever, because it offers nothing new. And that's a major criticism that a lot of fans keep brushing to the side because, hey, at least this one didn't have the wolf hog. That's not enough for me. I don't think Sonic Generations is that great anymore. It doesn't stand the test of time very well. I like all the Easter eggs and appreciate that the game devs and sound composers put their heart and soul into making these levels and the soundtrack great and all, but everything else about the game isn't very memorable. The story is rushed garbage, the cutscenes are irritating to look at, the premise is uninspired and stupid. I love the redefined boosting gameplay, but it doesn't make me appreciate the levels that much. All it really does is just make me wish for a Sonic Unleashed remaster with the Generations control scheme. The updated graphics are nice, but all the levels just make me wish we got HD remakes of all the 3D games rather than just having one level get brought back and remade. The game shows so much promise. Sonic Team and Sega are sitting on a gold mine, and they're not taking advantage of it. That really affects the game as a whole for me. Graphically, this game doesn't even surpass Sonic Unleashed as the best looking Sonic game. This game is using the Hedgehog engine, but it looks really watered down on the PS3. Yeah, if you're gonna get this game, get it on PC. The game looks really gorgeous on PC, but I still don't feel it's as good looking as the HD version of Sonic Unleashed. I guess they had to tone down the engine a bit to make sure the game would run less rougher because there's barely any frame rate drops or slowdown to be found. However, the PS3 version is stuck at 30 frames a second, which sucks. But on PC it runs at a decent 60 FPS, so if you have a good rig, get this game on PC, especially for the mods because there is a lot to be desired there. Despite that, Sonic Generations is a pretty shallow experience as a whole. Who the hell do I even recommend this game to? If I recommend it to all the casual non-Sonic gamers, they're not gonna get all the references in the levels, and if I recommend it to Sonic fans, they're just gonna bitch about and argue about everything in this game. Kind of like what I'm doing. Sonic Generations just doesn't have that much depth to it. It improves some things from colors, but it doesn't try to level up Unleashed. Just getting rid of the Wolf Hog is not enough for me. The shorter length of these levels really kill this game, and even the longer levels make it a chore to play through. I have more fun playing through Sonic Heroes for Christ's sakes. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Why did I make these stupid videos? Do I even have some sort of perspective worth listening to? What am I doing? Well, I don't know. And that's why I keep making these videos. To find out if I truly do have a point to make. It's what keeps me sane. It's what keeps me going. It's to help me find a purpose and stuff. Throughout the course of this Sonic marathon, I've come to find things that I never knew I wanted to bring up. It's helped me become much closer to finding out just what I want from a Sonic game in general. And to be fair, the various different qualities of this franchise is what keeps me part of it. And at one point it saved my life. What keeps me as a Sonic fan is the promise that Sonic can do great things in his games. Way more than what the casual audience may think he can. It's not just about gotta go fast or boost to win, it's something more. It's that adventurous feeling you're supposed to have when playing his games. The abilities he can use to conquer and reach greater things. It's been an aspect for the series since the original game. There's a lot that I want from a Sonic game to make it good, and it's so simple to achieve. I don't just want to go super fast and not worry about anything. I want to explore and reach newer areas. Make it feel like I am going on an adventure. There is a damn good 3D Sonic experience out there that can be achieved. And Sonic Adventure is the closest we've ever come to a perfect 3D Sonic game. The levels could be sped through super quickly, but you weren't advised to do that. You could explore and look around to find stuff. You could make it feel like you are on an adventure. Even Sonic Unleashed had that feeling, despite its apparent boost-to-win gameplay style. It had unique worlds to go to, and you could even look around them to see all sorts of cool areas and level segments. Unleashed and Adventure 1 hold up as the best 3D Sonic games because they didn't play it safe. They were innovative, unique, and even played around with the Sonic formula for a bit. That's kinda why I prefer playing Eggman Land over any level from Generations. That level felt way more gratifying to play through. Mind you, it was the last level, so it's not a very fair comparison, especially since the difficulty is shot through the roof in that level, but that's what makes me love it so much. I just want to keep going back to it until I conquer it. I'm still trying to get that damn S rank to this day. Levels like Eggman Land have so much in them that it makes you satisfied whenever you do complete it. That's where a level in a Sonic game can really shine. It can really benefit from the amount of replay value it offers. There are those people who say Sonic can't work in 3D, but they're so full of shit. They just sort of assume that Sonic can't work in 3D because the Genesis games were made to be in 2D. But once Sonic's eyes turned green and he started talking, they got so triggered that they looked down on most of the 3D games without actually playing them for themselves. It's a very unfair way of looking at games. Just because it's something different doesn't mean it's necessarily bad. Adventure 1 has aged badly, but I still think it holds up because it has so much potential to be the best 3D Sonic game. The level designs are so in-depth and perfect. There are some fans that want an open world Sonic game, but I think that would be kinda overblown. If it was physics based, then maybe. But I feel like if fan games like Sonic Utopia and Sonic Adventure were combined together, then we would have the perfect 3D Sonic game right then and there. Don't make the levels too open world. We may end up getting flashbacks to Sonic 06. I actually did hear a theory that Sonic Team abandoned the gameplay from the adventure games because Sonic 06 fucked it up so badly. So the new boosting gameplay was created so that no parallels between Sonic 06 could ever be made again. At the time, I can understand why this needed to happen, but it's been nearly 11 years since 06. I think it's time we give the adventure gameplay another go, because after Generations, I am fucking done with the boosting gameplay. It was throwing in Unleashed and perfected in Generations, but I think it's done now. Well, fuck me, Sonic Forces! I gotta slip this in somehow, but I'm giving Generations a 6.5. It's a good game, but it doesn't stand up to the same qualities as Adventure 1 or Unleashed for me. I would love to see another Sonic game take another shot at the adventure gameplay style, along with it being physics-based and giving us the ability to finally roll into a ball after running for a bit like we could do in the classics. The future for this franchise is pretty uncertain, but like I said, it's what keeps me going. I want to see Sonic achieve so many great things, and he has so much terrain left untouched. There's a perfect 3D Sonic game out there just waiting to be made, and I will keep waiting for it to happen. I'm not sure what's in store for Sonic's future, but I hope it's a good one. Thank you for spending hours or probably weeks watching these videos, but if this is your first episode of Cooper's Perspective, then I'm sorry if you watched this entire review being really confused. Check out my other videos if you can, but if you have been watching my stuff after all this time, again, I thank you. Even if you bail on my channel when I'm done talking about this blue hedgehog, I'm still grateful that you stopped by to listen to what I had to say about him, and hopefully you'll come back whenever I review his future installments. Until then, this has been Cooper Castille, and thank you all for watching my Sonic the Hedgehog marathon. Wait, I still have one more Sonic game to look at? Motherfucker!